The wind whispered across the rocky ridge, carrying with it the dry scent of dust and iron. Captain Elias adjusted his rifle for the 100th time, his cheek pressed against the cold steel as he studied the battlefield below. 5 kilometers away, just visible through the shimmering haze of heat, moved the alien commander. Elias knew her name. Everyone did. Kalira, the blade of the Skysteel Legion. Stories about her speed had spread through human ranks like wildfire. They said she could cross a battlefield in the time it took a soldier to breathe. They said her sword was always wet with the heat of battle before her enemies even knew she was near. But Elias trusted his rifle more than legends. His weapon had a reach far beyond any blade, and his eyes, calm, steady, unshaken, were sharper than any scope. Still, he had one problem. The scope was late, not broken, not useless, just slow. 30 seconds slow. The alien jammers scattered. Across the desert disrupted every piece of human tech. When Elias looked through the glass, he saw the past. Kalira's movements from half a minute ago. Every adjustment he made, every breath he took depended on calculating where she would be, not where she was. And yet he waited. He lay flat against the rock, his body hidden beneath a drape of camouflage, netting. Around him silence pressed down, broken only by the crackle of comms in his ear. His commander's voice whispered, "Captain Elias, do you have eyes on the target?" "I do," Elias replied softly. 5 kilometers out. Movement, pattern steady. I can take the shot. Copy that. This is our best chance, you know what's at stake. End her reign of fear. Elias exhaled slowly, letting the tension bleed out of his muscles. His finger brushed the trigger. Through the lagging scope, Kalira appeared to pause, surveying the battlefield below her. Soldiers moved like ants far beneath them. Alien formations. On one side, human squads dug into trenches on the other. One spark, one moment, could ignite everything. Elias centered the crosshairs on her chest. He calculated her movement, adjusted for the delay, accounted for the wind. Years of experience whispered through his mind like instinct. He had done this countless times before. Precision was his art. Target locked, he murmured. For a brief second, the world felt still. Then he squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared, a thunderclap that echoed across the ridge. The bullet cut through the air faster than sound, slicing the distance with deadly purpose. But even before it reached the mark, Elias's gut twisted. The scope flickered. Kalira was gone. His eyes darted away from the lens. On the horizon, nothing moved. No figure, no commander. Just empty air where she had stood. Missed? His commander's voice cracked in disbelief. Elias's heart pounded. But not from failure, from instinct. Something was wrong. He rolled, to his knees, scanning the ridge with naked eyes. The desert heat shimmered. The shadows seemed too deep. Then the wind shifted. Behind him, stone crunched under a light step. Elias spun, but too late. A shadow loomed over him, graceful and silent. Kalira stood less than 2 meters away, her blade angled at his throat. The sunlight caught the weapon's edge, throwing a sharp gleam across his face. She hadn't been 5 kilometers away. She had been here. Elias froze. His mind calculated, but his body refused to move. The legends had been true, and still, seeing it with his own eyes, felt unreal. She had crossed the battlefield, closed the impossible distance, and appeared behind him before his bullet had even reached where she once stood. The comm in his ear crackled again, but Elias ignored it. His focus was locked on the alien before him. Kalira was taller than him, her frame lean but powerful. Her armor shimmered faintly with a strange blue sheen, marked by scars of countless battles. Her face was sharp, her eyes dark as storm clouds, fixed on him with unreadable intensity. "You knew I was there," she said, her voice smooth but edged with steel, "and yet you fired anyway. Brave or foolish?" Elias swallowed, his throat brushing the blade's edge. Calculated. For the first time, her lips curved, half a smile, half a sneer. "No calculation could save you from me," she said. The rifle lay by his side, useless now. Elias's fingers twitched, but he made no move to grab it. He knew better. Against her speed, even a twitch could mean death. Instead, he steadied his breathing. "If you were going to kill me," he said evenly, "you would have already done." Kalira's gaze flickered. Her blade pressed closer for a moment, then eased slightly. Not away, but less threatening. Her eyes studied him, curious. "You are calm," she said. "Most humans tremble, they run, they beg, not you." "Running doesn't change the distance," Elias replied. "Begging doesn't change the outcome." A silence stretched between them. The desert wind howled through the rocks, lifting sand in small spirals. Elias's ears still buzzed with frantic voices over comms, demanding a response, asking for his position. He ignored them. This was no longer a mission. This was something else. Kalira lowered her blade just enough to let him breathe. "You do not fight like the others," she said slowly. "You trust patience, stillness. You remind me of hunters." "I am a hunter," Elias said simply. "That's what snipers are." Her eyes narrowed. "A hunter who missed." Elias allowed the corner of his mouth to twitch. "Or perhaps a hunter who drew the prey close." Kalira tilted her head, almost amused. For a moment, the tension seemed to ease, though her blade remained in hand. Elias realized this was not victory nor defeat. It was recognition. A strange, fragile thread binding two enemies across the gulf of war. In the distance, shouts rose from the battlefield. Explosions thundered. The battle was beginning, whether they stood still or not. Kalira glanced toward the noise, then back at him. "This war is not your doing," she said, "nor mine. And yet here we stand, told to kill one another like pawns." Elias met her gaze. "Then what happens now?" For the first time, Kalira pulled her blade back fully. She sheathed it with a swift motion, though her eyes never left his. "Now," she said, "I decide whether your calm is worth more than your death." She turned, vanishing into the shadows of the rocks with a speed Elias's eyes could barely follow. One heartbeat she stood before him. The next, she was gone, like smoke carried by the wind. Elias exhaled, tension draining from his chest. He retrieved his rifle, but he knew the shot had never truly been his to take. He had aimed from 5 kilometers away. He had trusted the scope. But the war had just shown him something more dangerous than distance, speed, and the woman who carried it like a blade. As he crawled back into cover, Elias couldn't shake the thought. Kalira had spared him. Not out of mercy, not out of hesitation, but out of curiosity, and that meant she would come again. Captain Elias sat in the shadow of the rocks, his rifle resting across his knees. The desert heat pressed against his skin, but his mind was colder than the steel he carried. He replayed the moment again and again, the scope lagging, the shot wasted, the sudden presence of Kalira behind him with her blade ready. She could have killed him. No, she should have killed him. That was what commanders did to enemies. But she hadn't. She had spoken instead. Tested him, observed him. And then she had vanished like mist. Elias had fought in many battles, but never had he faced an opponent who left him with more questions than answers. The comm in his ear still buzzed with static and frantic calls. He finally pressed his thumb to the receiver. "Command, this is Captain Elias," he said calmly. "Elias, report. What happened?" His commander's voice was sharp, demanding. "The shot missed. Do you have visual?" Elias looked at the empty ridge where Kalira had stood. "Negative. She's gone." "Gone?" "She was faster than anticipated," Elias said carefully. "But she didn't strike. I'm alive." There was silence for a moment, then a low growl of frustration. "You had one task, Elias. That commander is the knife tearing through our lines. If you can't finish it, we'll send someone who will." Elias muted the comm. He didn't need the noise. He needed clarity. He wiped the sweat from his brow and studied the horizon. Below, human and alien forces clashed in a storm of dust and fire. Artillery thundered, smoke rose, and voices carried faintly on the wind. Yet here, on this high ridge, there was quiet. A quiet that didn't last. A whisper of air moved behind him. Elias's hand slid to his rifle, but he did not raise it. He knew who it was before he turned. Kalyra stood there once more, as if she had never left. Her movements were silent, her presence sudden but strangely unthreatening. Her blade remained, sheathed at her side this time, though her hand rested lightly on its hilt. "You didn't run," she said, her voice even. "Running wouldn't matter," Elias replied, his tone steady. Her eyes studied him, as sharp as her sword. "Most humans, I have faced either scream or scatter, you sit." "I'm saving my strength," Elias said. "Battlefields aren't about wasting energy. They're about knowing when to act and when to wait." Kalyra tilted her head slightly, almost curious. "Strange. Your people fight with fire, with machines, with noise. Yet you—" She gestured. "At him. You are still, like the sand before the storm." Elias said nothing. He kept his breathing calm, his gaze fixed on her without fear. His instincts told him that if he showed weakness, even for a second, she would see him as prey. But if he held steady, if he matched her gaze, perhaps he could turn this moment into something else. A duel of instincts. Kalyra's eyes narrowed. "Do you not fear me, human?" "I respect you," Elias answered. Fear clouds judgment. Respect sharpens it. Her lips curved faintly at his words. "Bold," she said softly. A silence stretched between them, heavy but not hostile. The sounds of war drifted faintly from below, but here the only sound was the wind. Finally, Kalyra stepped closer. Not fast this time, but deliberate. She stood, within a meter of him, her shadow falling across his rifle. Elias did not flinch. He kept his rifle resting across his knees, hands loose, posture calm. "You are not like the others," she said again, her tone quieter. "You wait, you measure, you think. And you don't," Elias countered. Her brow lifted. "Explain." "You move like lightning," he said. "Fast, decisive, unstoppable, but lightning burns out as quickly as it strikes. You trust your speed, your reflexes. I trust patience, distance, calculation. That's why this war continues. Our strengths cancel each other." Kalyra studied him for a long moment. Perhaps that is true. Her hand shifted on the hilt of her sword, but she did not draw it. Instead, she lowered her arm fully, resting it against her side. It was not surrender, but it was something Elias recognized. Restraint. "You and I," she said slowly, "stand on opposite sides. Yet I see something familiar in you." Elias frowned slightly. "Familiar?" "Hunters," she explained. "My people value speed, but hunters, true hunters, they value the pause before the strike. You have that look, the patience of the hunter, the stillness of one who waits until the prey believes itself safe." Elias gave a faint shrug. "Maybe we're not so different then." The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Perhaps." Their eyes locked again, not in challenge, but in recognition. Two warriors, shaped by different worlds, but bound by the same unspoken code, respect for the art of survival. Suddenly, a sharp explosion echoed from below. Both of them turned instinctively toward the battlefield. Through the haze, a human squad was breaking, retreating under heavy alien fire. Soldiers scrambled for cover, their formation shattered. Elias lifted his rifle, instinctively aiming downrange. Kalyra's hand snapped to her sword hilt. For a heartbeat, the old tension returned. Two enemies, ready to strike. But then they both froze. If Elias fired, she could cut him down before the bullet reached its mark. If she struck, his finger could pull the trigger in the same instant. The balance was perfect. the outcome uncertain, a duel of instincts. Neither moved. Finally, Elias lowered his rifle slightly. If I shoot, this ends here. One of us dies, maybe both. But what changes? Kalira's grip on her sword eased, though she did not let go. Nothing, she admitted. The war continues. Their eyes met again, and in that moment, a silent truth passed between them. Killing each other would solve nothing. You're fast, Elias said. I can't outrun you, but you're also predictable. Her brow furrowed. Predictable? You'll always close the distance, he said. Always move forward, it's your strength, but also your weakness. Kalira studied him, and to his surprise, she gave a small nod. And you, she said, are bound by your scope, by your machines. You see far, but not near. You think slow, deliberate. That is your weakness. Elias allowed himself the smallest smile. Then maybe we balance each other. Kalira tilted, her head again, her eyes sharp but curious. Balance, she repeated softly as if testing the word. Another explosion rumbled from below, louder this time. Both of them glanced back at the chaos of battle. Human soldiers were retreating. Alien war cries echoed. The war pressed on, uncaring of the strange pause on this ridge. Kalira stepped back a pace, her figure half-shadowed by the rocks. This duel is not finished, she said. But neither will I end it today. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle. Then why are you here? She held his gaze, her expression unreadable. Because you are the first human who did not tremble before my blade, and I must know why. Her words lingered in the air like smoke. Then, without warning, she moved. One heartbeat she was there, the next she was gone, vanishing into the desert as if she had never stood there at all. Elias remained seated, his rifle across his knees, staring at the empty space where she had been. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was something else. A test. A game. A conversation carried not with words but with instincts, and Elias knew deep down she would return, not as an executioner, not yet as a challenger. The next morning, the desert battlefield looked different. Smoke still rose from the craters below, and the air carried the sharp smell of burned metal and sand. Human forces had fallen back during the night, retreating to deeper trenches. Alien banners fluttered across the valley, a reminder of their advance. Captain Elias sat near his ridge, chewing on a ration bar that tasted like chalk. His rifle lay across his lap, cleaned and ready, though he hadn't slept more than a few hours. His mind replayed every detail of the night before. Kalira's sudden appearance, her questions, her decision not to strike. Why had she spared him? Curiosity, she had said, but curiosity could turn sharp in an instant. He knew she might return with her blade, not with questions. His comm crackled again. Captain Elias, report, came his commander's voice. I'm still on position, Elias answered. Enemy activity spotted. They're reinforcing the valley. Hold your ground, reinforcements are moving to flank them. You'll have another chance at the alien commander. Don't fail this time. The comm went silent. Elias exhaled slowly. His superiors saw Kalira only as a target, a piece to remove from the board. But Elias no longer viewed her so simply. She was something more. A mirror of himself in a way, shaped by instincts and discipline. The sound of movement pulled him from his thoughts. Sand shifted lightly behind him. His hand slid toward his rifle, but he did not raise it. He already knew who it was. Kalira emerged from the rocks like a shadow made flesh. She moved with quiet grace, her armor glinting faintly under the sun. Her blade was sheathed at her side, though her hand rested near it as always. You are still here, she said. And you came back, Elias replied calmly. She tilted her head slightly. Perhaps I came to see if you would run. You already? No, I won't, Elias said. A faint smile touched her lips. Yes, I know. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the valley below. For a moment, they both stood side by side, watching the human and alien forces prepare for another clash. From this height, the soldiers looked small, like scattered insects building their nests and preparing their weapons. This war is waste, Kalira said quietly. Day after day, the same battles, the same screams, and yet nothing changes. Elias glanced at her. You speak as if you don't believe in it. She was silent for a moment. Belief does not matter. Orders matter. My people follow the old ways. Speed, strength, honor. They follow me because I carry the blade. And you follow orders because you must, Elias said. Her eyes flickered, toward him, sharp and unreadable. And you? Do you believe in this war? Elias looked down at the battlefield, at the smoke and the broken machines scattered across the desert floor. Belief isn't part of the job. I fight because my people fight. I follow because that's what soldiers do. Their words hung in the air, heavy but honest. Kalira's gaze softened slightly. Perhaps we are both bound by chains we did not choose. Elias did not answer, but in his heart, he knew she was right. The sound of boots crunching in sand suddenly broke the moment. Elias turned sharply, rifle ready, as figures emerged from the lower ridge. At least a dozen alien soldiers climbed toward them, armor shining, weapons drawn. They had found him. Kalira moved instantly, stepping between Elias and the soldiers. Her voice rang out in their strange language, sharp and commanding. The soldiers froze, exchanging uneasy glances. One of them barked a response. Pointing his weapon at Elias, Kalira's hand flashed to her blade. She did not strike, but the threat was clear. Her words cut like steel, and the soldiers hesitated. Finally, after a tense pause, they lowered their weapons and pulled back, retreating down the ridge. Elias lowered his rifle slowly. His eyes stayed on Kalira. You just saved me, he said. She sheathed her blade again. Do not mistake it. For kindness, I need answers first. Elias studied her carefully. You're curious about humans. I am curious about you, Kalira corrected. Your calm, your patience, the way you do not bend, even when faced with death. It is not like the others. Elias gave a faint shrug. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Her lips curved slightly. Stubbornness is a form of strength. The silence that followed was not hostile. It was almost peaceful. Elias realized that despite everything, the battles, the orders, the enemies, he trusted her in that moment more than he trusted the commanders barking at him through his comm. You could walk away, Elias said softly. Back to your army. Back to your people. Why stand here with me? Kalira looked at him, her dark eyes steady. Because you remind me of what war has forgotten, that the enemy is not always a monster. Her words struck deeper than any blade. Elias said nothing, but his chest tightened with something he hadn't expected to feel in this place. Understanding. The sun began to sink, painting the desert in shades of red and gold. Below, the battlefield quieted, as soldiers on both sides prepared for night. Fires burned in the camps. Machines stood like dark silhouettes against the horizon. Kalira stepped back, her figure blending into the shadows. This is not alliance, she said firmly. Not yet, but it is not enmity either. Elias nodded slowly. Then what is it? Her answer was simple, but it carried weight. It is a test. With that, she turned and vanished once more into the desert night. Elias sat alone on the ridge, his rifle resting across his knees, his thoughts heavier than the weapon in his hands. He had come here as a sniper, a soldier with orders and targets. But now he was something else. A man, caught in the space between war and something unspoken. He looked toward the horizon where Kalira had disappeared. An uneasy alliance had begun, not written in treaties, not declared in words, but forged in respect, in patience, and in the simple act of choosing not to kill. For the first time in many years, Elias wondered if the war could be more than just blood and orders. And he knew, deep down, that his path and Kalira's were no longer separate. They were bound, whether by fate, by instinct, or by something far more dangerous. The desert was restless that night. A sharp wind carried dust across the ridge, whistling through the rocks like a warning. Captain Elias sat with his rifle balanced across his knees, his eyes scanning the valley below. Both armies had pulled, back to their camps after another day of fighting, but he knew the quiet would not last. His comm crackled again. "Captain Elias," his commander's voice came through. "We've intercepted chatter. The alien commander, Kalira, has been spotted near your position. Do not hesitate this time. End it. That's an order." Elias stared into the dark. He had expected this. Command didn't know about his encounters with her. Or maybe they did and simply didn't care. To them, Kalira was not a person. She was a problem to erase. He muted the channel. He couldn't follow that order, not after what had passed between them. The sound of soft steps behind him told him he wasn't alone. Kalira emerged from the shadows as if she were part of them. Her armor reflected faint moonlight, and her blade rested at her side. Her eyes were sharp but not hostile. "You're still here," she said quietly. "And you keep finding me," Elias replied. Her gaze lingered on him. "Perhaps we are both searching for the same thing." Elias gave a faint smile. "Answers? Or balance?" Kalira said. The wind carried their words away, leaving only silence between them. Elias felt the strange calm that always came when she stood nearby. Not peace exactly, but something steady, like two storms circling but not yet clashing. Suddenly the calm broke. From both sides of the ridge, figures emerged, dozens of them. Some wore human armor, others alien. Their weapons glinted in the dark. Elias's instincts flared. This wasn't a patrol. This was a trap. Kalira's hand snapped to her blade. Elias lifted his rifle in the same heartbeat. Both turned in opposite directions, soldiers of their own people advancing with weapons drawn, faces hard. "They've betrayed us," Elias said through clenched teeth. Kalira's eyes flashed. "They fear what they do not understand. To them, we are traitors." The soldiers closed in, forming a tightening circle around them. Commands rang out in both languages. "Surrender. Drop your weapons. On your knees." Elias and Kalira exchanged a glance. In that look was an entire conversation. Neither of them moved. The first shot rang out, shattering the tension. A bullet cracked against stone near Elias's shoulder. Another blast of alien energy scorched the sand at Kalira's feet. The circle tightened. Elias fired first. His rifle barked, and one soldier dropped. Kalira moved at the same instant, her blade flashing in the moonlight as she cut through two attackers before they could blink. The ridge erupted into chaos. Elias worked from distance, his shots precise and steady, each one dropping a soldier before they could take aim. Kalira blurred beside him, her movements too fast for the eye to follow, her blade an arc of silver cutting through enemy ranks. Back to back, they fought. His calm balance of patience and accuracy met her storm of speed and strength. Together they became something more than either alone. "Your left," Kalira shouted. Elias pivoted, firing at a human soldier who had climbed the rocks for a flank. The man fell, and Elias reloaded smoothly. "Behind you," Elias warned. Kalira spun, her blade deflecting a shot before slicing through the attacker. For the first time, Elias realized something shocking. He trusted her to guard his back as if she were one of his own squad. But the enemy numbers kept coming. More soldiers climbed the ridge, firing, shouting, closing the circle tighter. "They won't stop," Elias muttered, slamming another magazine into his rifle. "They are afraid," Kalira said, her chest rising with heavy breaths. "Afraid of what we could become." Together they cut their way through wave after wave. Dust rose around them. Sparks flew. Bullets and energy blasts lit the night like storms. But even legends have limits. Elias's rifle clicked empty. He slung it over his shoulder and drew his combat knife, standing back to back with Kalira. She glanced at him briefly, surprise flickering in her eyes, then nodded. More soldiers rushed them. Elias fought with precision, his knife finding weak points, his body moving with the discipline of years of training. Kalira flowed beside him, her blade faster than thought, her strikes carving through the dark like lightning. And still, the circle closed. Suddenly, a flare burst above, bathing the ridge in harsh white light. Both human and alien soldiers paused, shielding their eyes. Elias squinted up at it, realizing the trap had been set even deeper. "Reinforcements," he said grimly. Kalira's jaw tightened. "Then this ridge will be our grave." But Elias shook his head. "Not if we move. Together." She met his gaze. For a moment, the world narrowed to only them. Enemies, hunters, survivors, now allies. Then she gave a single nod. Together. They broke the circle with sudden force, Elias firing his last few rounds while Kalira cut a path through. Stunned soldiers. Sand flew under their boots as they dashed into the shadows of the ridge, escaping the tightening noose. Behind them, shouts and gunfire echoed. But they did not stop. They ran until the night swallowed them, until the ridge was only a dark memory behind them. Finally, breathless, they stopped among the jagged rocks of a canyon. Elias leaned against the stone, catching his breath. Kalira stood nearby, her blade still in hand, eyes scanning the horizon for pursuit. "They wanted us dead," Elias said. Kalira nodded slowly. "Not just dead. Silenced. Our own people fear the bond forming between us. They would rather destroy it than see what it might become." Elias's chest tightened. He had known betrayal in war, but this was different. His commanders had not simply abandoned him, they had marked him as an enemy. And yet, he was not alone. He looked at Kalira. She was breathing hard. Her armor, scarred, her blade nicked from battle, but she was still standing, still watching his back. In that moment, Elias understood something. The war had changed. Not because of armies or weapons, but because of what had just happened on that ridge. Two enemies had fought side by side, and neither side would ever forgive them for it. Kalira finally sheathed her blade, her eyes locking with his. "We are hunted now. By both armies." Elias nodded. "Then we'll survive. Together." For the first time, Kalira allowed herself a real smile. Small, sharp, but real. The desert wind howled through the canyon, carrying away the last echoes of battle. Above them, the stars burned bright, indifferent to the wars below. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle. He and Kalira were no longer pieces on someone else's board. They had stepped off it entirely. And now, for the first time, they would choose their own path. The canyon was silent except for the sound of Elias's slow breathing and the soft scrape of Kalira's armor as she leaned against the rocks. The night stretched endless above them, filled with stars that glittered like cold eyes watching, from afar. For the first time in years, Elias was no longer sure who the enemy really was. The human commander had ordered his death. Kalira's people had sent soldiers to silence her. Two armies, sworn to destroy one another, had united for one purpose: to erase the strange bond forming between sniper and blade. Elias ran his hand over the surface of his rifle. It felt heavier than before, as if the weapon now carried not just bullets but decisions that could alter more than battles. They could change the course of the war itself. Kalira broke the silence first. "They will not stop," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the truth. She had led soldiers her whole life. She knew pursuit when she saw it. "They will hunt us both until the end," Elias nodded. "Then we don't give them the chance. We move first." Her gaze sharpened. "You speak like a hunter again." "Because I am one," Elias said. He leaned back against the stone, eyes scanning the canyon's edge. "And right, now survival means choosing our ground carefully." Kalira studied him for a long moment. Then, with a slow breath, she lowered herself to sit across from him. The tension in her frame eased, just slightly. "You trust me," she said at last. Elias's answer was simple. "I do." For the first time, she didn't respond with a challenge or a sharp remark. She simply nodded, as if that trust was something she had been waiting to hear. At dawn, they moved. The canyon walls glowed gold in the rising light as Elias and Kalira picked their way through the rocks. Every sound carried in the still air, so they kept their steps light and careful. Elias moved with the patience of a soldier trained to wait hours for a single shot. Kalira moved like a shadow, her speed controlled but ready to ignite at any moment. When they reached a high ridge overlooking the battlefield, both stopped. From above, the view was grim. Human camps spread across one side of the valley, their machines lined up like silent beasts waiting to charge. On the other side, alien banners fluttered above armored structures, their forces drilling in perfect formations. Between them lay a scarred wasteland of sand, craters, and broken machines. Elias's jaw tightened. Nothing changes. Day after day, same ground, same blood. Kalira's voice was low. That is why they fear us, because together we prove there is another way. Elias turned toward her. But if we don't act, they'll crush us both before anyone notices. She looked back at him, her eyes dark and sharp. Then we make them notice. That night they struck. Not against soldiers. Not against camps. Against the machines of war themselves. Elias positioned himself high on a ridge, rifle steady. Kalira moved like lightning across the valley floor, planting charges at key points with a precision that matched his shots. Together they dismantled weapons that had once rained destruction on thousands. A human artillery gun collapsed in fire, its operators scattering in shock. Alien war engines went silent as explosives tore through their cores. Where armies expected to face each other, they instead found their weapons ruined by unseen hands. Whispers began to spread. Some said it was sabotage. Others said it was betrayal. But among the soldiers, both human and alien, a different rumor grew. A sniper who could strike from any distance and a blade that could not be outrun. Fighting together. At first, soldiers dismissed it as a tale. But each night more war machines were found destroyed, their guards left alive but shaken. Each time, the mark of precision and speed was clear. The legend of Elias and Kalira began. Weeks passed. The two of them lived on the move, never staying in one place for long. They shared rations, water, and stories in the quiet hours between strikes. Elias told her about the cities of Earth, about rain that fell from gray skies and forests that stretched green and endless. Kalira spoke of her world's endless plains, where warriors raced against the wind, blades flashing in sunlight. And slowly, what had begun as respect grew into something deeper. Not friendship, not alliance in the formal sense, but a bond built in fire and survival. A bond stronger than orders. But with every strike, with every whisper that spread, the danger grew. Both armies poured resources into finding them. Entire squads hunted through the desert searching for the sniper and the blade. One evening, as they rested in a narrow cave, Elias asked the question that had lingered in his mind. Why did you spare me that first night, when you had the chance? Kalira was silent for a long moment. Her eyes reflected the flicker of their small fire. Because you did not tremble. You looked at me and did not see a monster. I have killed many who feared me. But you saw something else, and I wanted to know why. Elias met her gaze. And now you know? She gave the smallest nod. Now I know. You fight not just with weapon or skill. You fight with patience, with will. That is rare. The fire crackled softly between them. Neither spoke further, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was steady, shared. The final turning point came sooner than either expected. One morning, both armies moved at once. Human forces advanced with machines rolling like thunder. Alien soldiers surged to meet them, blades flashing, war cries echoing across the valley. Elias and Kalira watched from the ridge. This battle will decide the valley, Elias said. Kalira's jaw tightened. And bury thousands. They exchanged a look. No words were needed. Both knew what had to be done, not fighting for their armies, not fighting against them, but showing them something they could not ignore. At the height of the battle, when chaos thundered across the valley, Elias fired a single shot. It struck not a soldier, but a signal tower at the center of the human line. Sparks flew, and the field went dark with confusion. At the same moment, Kalira charged across the no-man's land, her blade flashing not to kill but to carve down banners and engines of war. Soldiers from both sides froze, stunned, as the sniper and the blade moved through the center of the battlefield, not as enemies, but as one. They fought only those who pressed too close, striking to defend, not to slaughter. Together, they carved a path that split the battlefield itself. The effect was electric. Soldiers on both sides hesitated. Commanders shouted orders, but voices wavered. For the first time, humans and aliens alike saw not just war, but the possibility of something. Elias and Kalira stood back to back in the center of the valley, surrounded but unbroken. Their message was clear, carried not in words but in action. The war no longer owned them. By nightfall, the armies had pulled back, shaken and uncertain. Neither claimed victory, neither claimed defeat. But among the soldiers, the legend spread, faster than fire. They spoke of the human sniper and the alien blade who fought together, of the moment when war itself paused to watch, of the bond that neither commanders nor orders could erase. Some called them traitors, others called them heroes, but all remembered. High on the ridge, Elias sat with his rifle resting against his knee. Kalira stood beside him, her blade sheathed, her gaze fixed on the stars. "They will still hunt us," she said quietly. "Let them," Elias replied. His voice was steady. "We're more than soldiers now, more than pawns." She looked at him, her dark eyes reflecting the starlight. "Then what are we?" Elias thought for a moment, then gave a small smile. "A beginning." For the first time, Kalira smiled too. Not sharp, not guarded, but true. The wind carried the sound of battle far behind them. Ahead lay only the open desert, endless and waiting, and together they stepped forward, not as enemies, not as commanders of broken armies, but as something new, a legend. The sniper, who aimed from 5 kilometers away, and the blade who appeared behind him but chose to stand beside him instead.